All right, welcome to the Questionable Calls podcast. Sunday afternoon, a little after 4:30. Clark, we just watched the Dolphins have a resounding shutout win against the Jets, 30-0. Um, it's been a rough week for the Dolphins in general, and especially the fans of the team. Like after that, we haven't talked since the Monday night debacle. But that was just a crushing loss by the Dolphins on Monday night. Had a 2 touchdown lead with 4 minutes to go and somehow managed to lose it. And not that we're surprised, by the way. Not that the Dolphins haven't blown games in the past. Not that that's out of character, but it just hasn't really happened this season where we've absolutely blown a game that we basically had in the bag. Now, that being said, the Dolphins did not deserve to win on Monday night. Even though it kind of went their way at the end and Tennessee decided to just hand them 21 points basically. But yeah, so it was rough. And then you thought, oh geez, and then Tyreek Hill's hurt, and then he's announced he's inactive today, and then Waddle gets hurt early in the game, and you're thinking, all right, what else can go wrong here? I mean, the only thing we need, the icing on the cake, would just be Tua goes out with an injury. And it's like that's all we need, and then we could just pack it up. Let's just give up. That's it. We're done. And
Yeah, if you follow the podcast on Instagram, which at the end of the podcast there's a link to it anyway. I made a reel and I was basically like reacting to the first quarter with the Dolphins against the Jets. It basically went from, is Jalen Waddle hurt to they sack Zach Wilson, they get the ball, they recover a fumble, and then they score a touchdown. It's like, yes, and then the Jets try to do a fake punt and it doesn't work out. And then from there, the Dolphins didn't look back.
Yeah. So well, we'll talk about the game today first, and then we'll get into thoughts about whether they can make the playoffs and all of that. Look, I think that Clark, the way that the Dolphins offense was, I thought the McDaniel actually, for the first time, I thought called plays to the team that he has and not the team that he thinks he should have. I like the way that we're going to run the ball, and then we're going to keep everything in front of us, and then one or two times a game we're going to drop back, do a deep play action drop, and try to hit a shot down the field when we know Tua can actually be protected. So I think this is the way the Dolphins should work. Now, obviously, the game today is ridiculous because there was no point in playing the second half because you're playing the Jets, and the Jets couldn't do anything. So, I'm not saying that you're going to get that game against good teams. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying this is the team that the Dolphins should be. They should be a run the ball, control the game with the pass, to make sure you get completions first, and then every now and then try to take a deep shot. It shouldn't be we're going to drop back and put Tua back there behind an average offensive line, which, I'm going to be nice to the Dolphins offensive line because I saw what a bad offensive line the Jets have, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful because there's no way Tua would have survived this long behind the Jets offensive line. I can tell you that for sure.
Yeah.
But I like the way they executed. They had the week to prepare without Tyreek Hill, which I think really helped. And I think you can run on the Jets defense. I think that's I think teams have been able to do that this season. I just think you don't want to be dropped back and have to just face their pass rush. And so I thought they did a really good job with that. Does this and look, they had to get the win today. So they had to win this game if they want to have any shot to do anything, because I'm of the mind that the Dolphins have to win the division and get a home game to have a chance of winning a playoff game. I don't think they're going to go on the road and actually beat anybody. And I think it's just going to be more difficult that way. But yeah, I'm happy with the way that they played. Hopefully Tyreek Hill can come back, because the last 3 games, Clark, they're going to be lucky to win one of them. And honestly, that's all they really need to do. If they can just win 1 out of the last 3, they'll be fine. But I'm not convinced that's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they lost all 3 games, but we'll see how it goes. So, your thoughts?
Yeah. So, obviously, look, you get the win. I mean, they shut the Jets out, which, let's be honest here. I mean, I think if people paid attention to, I did a quick video before the game started. I was really cynical about the Dolphins' chances to win the game. But then they go out and they blow out the Jets, which They should. I mean, you're better than the Jets, even without Tyreek Hill, even with your offensive line being substandard. You know, uh, you guys should go out and beat the Jets. And I do think that's a great point that you made about they had the week to prepare without Tyreek Hill because he didn't practice all week. So I think that makes a big difference as opposed to the Titans game where he's out in the middle of the game, and then you have to kind of figure out how to do stuff. And look, props to Jalen Waddle. I can't really do the Waddle dance, but he had a great game, and I think he's capable of doing that every now and then, which is great. So, and whenever the Dolphins, I mean, something that I've noticed with this team over the last 4 years or so, especially with Tua starting as the quarterback, if they can get a defensive touchdown, or maybe not a defensive touchdown, but if you just get the defense to get a turnover really deep in the other team's territory, then it makes it really easy to score a touchdown, and the Dolphins can start off with the lead and score first. And that's probably a stat that probably applies to many other teams. I mean, if you can play downhill first and be in the lead, that makes it a lot easier, especially when you're missing Tyreek Hill. And they did a pretty good job today. I mean, you could tell that they were doing a lot of screen passes and stuff. They're trying to get the ball out quick. They're running the ball to kind of keep people off Tua. And then, they opened things up for that one play, and that's one of the better deep balls I've seen Tua throw. That was like right on the money. So it's, I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm relieved. Okay. Because I just didn't want to lose. I never want to lose to the Jets, especially, this late in the season when they absolutely need a win. But, like Tua was saying after the Titans game, well, these aren't the same old Dolphins. Yeah. All right. I mean, look, you went out and beat the Jets. You recovered from a really shitty loss the other night. But, if you want to prove you're not the same Dolphins, you need to go win one of these next 3 games. Like, I need to see that first before I start, I start changing kind of my opinion. But, so now I'm, and we said this before the game. I was like, look, if the Dolphins lost this game, I was just going to be like, just lose the rest of your games. Because I don't really want to deal with this. Like, this isn't, Now I'm kind of like, all right, let's see if you guys can win one of these games and secure the division so you get a home playoff game. And then we'll see, we'll see who you have to play. I mean, could it be the Colts? Could it be the Bengals? Could it be the Texans? Could it be the Browns? I don't know. I mean, I think the Dolphins could maybe win against one of those teams if it was down in Miami.
Yeah. So, look, the Buffalo's playing Dallas right now. If Dallas were to beat Buffalo today, then the Dolphins would have a 3-game lead with 3 games to go. So they would basically, the ball would be in their court. They would need 1 win or a Buffalo loss, and they clinch the division. So, that would be obviously advantageous. We don't really want to come down to the last game against Buffalo with the division on the line. That's not really what we want. So, in order to avoid
no
that,
part of the Sasquatch. That's
right.
That's what we've been referring to Josh Allen as. We want no part of that in a big game.
So I think, so we'll see what happens. I'm not, the Dolphins still haven't beaten a good team in about 27 games. So they've got to figure out some way to do that if they're especially not only to get people to take them seriously, but if you you want to prove to us that you're legitimate, you're gonna have to win one of these games. So I don't think their chances are great. I don't think it's fantastic that they're going to win, but they just need 1. So if they can get 1, who knows what happens. It's the NFL. Week to week, teams win all the time that, you feel like have no business winning. So, can you get one of those games? But so Clark, I was thinking about this. We've been talking back and forth about, are the Dolphins going to give him a contract? What are we going to do if that happens? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I mean, Clark, I'm watching these teams. Okay, the Browns have 9 wins. Okay, they have Joe Flacco. Their quarterbacks this year have been, half decent. Deshaun Watson, Joe Flacco, PJ Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Like, they're probably going to win 10 games. They need one win out of the last 3. They're going to win 10 games. The Colts have 8 wins. Okay, they've had, they started out with Anthony Richardson, and then they've had
Gardner Minshew.
Gardner Minshew, right? They got a brand new coach, Shane Steichen, right? So they look like they might win 10 wins. Denver might have 10, might get 10 wins. I know they lost to Detroit yesterday, but the rest of their schedule is all winnable games. And now the Dolphins have the tiebreaker over Denver. But the thing is, Clark, if the Dolphins don't win another game, I know that I'm watching the numbers, and Dolphins have a 97% chance of winning or making the playoffs, and I'm just going, yeah, but there could be 4 or 5 teams, wildcard teams, with 10 wins. So I don't know about that. But anyway, so I'm thinking about, in my thought on that, or my theory is, well, Clark, I mean, I look back at the last 20, since the Dolphins last won a playoff game, right? They won a playoff game the last time in 2000. Right. So that's 23 seasons. Okay.
Oh,
not including, this would be number 24, 23 seasons since that happened. Right. The Dolphins have won have 8 wins in a season, 12 out of the 23 times. So about every other year they win at least 8 games. Now there's some 9s in there. There's some 10s. There's an 11, sometimes they win more than that, but mostly there are between 6 and 11 wins. That's basically what the last 23 years have basically been. And so my contention is, why do the Dolphins need to pay Tua $40 million a year so we can win, 9 or 10 games? Like, that's about what we usually do anyway. So my contention is, why would we do that when all of these other teams are winning with, whoever else at quarterback, and they're winning between 8 and 10 games? So what are we getting out of this? Like, we drafted Tua, we're going to give him this contract, and what do we get out of it? We get to be 9 and 8. Or this year maybe we'll be 10 and 7 or 11 and 6, whatever it is,
Right.
So it's not like we're I know everybody loves Tua, I get it, but if you just go wins above replacement, like, what are we doing? Like, we're better off. You're better off just getting a veteran, drafting a young guy, and then kind of seeing what happens, because the rest of the team is really good. And you see what happens when you have Tyreek Hill. Boy, it makes your life a lot easier.
Right. And you can do that if you're not paying your quarterback a bunch of money. And then here, I'll put this, I'll share this real quick. I made a graphic. Screen. All right, hang on. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. So I wanted to break down. I did a really deep dive into stats on a couple days ago, just to kind of see, because I'd seen some stuff before the season started. What's Tua's record versus playoff teams, and I wanted to include this year. So I looked at Tua's entire career up to this point. The Jets game today is not included in this. I'll add this, in the future. But so, I mean, if you look at, now granted, part of the problem is that it's like, a lot of times you don't play a lot of playoff teams during the regular season. So that's only 15 games, and there's a lot more starts that he's had in his career. He's had a lot more starts against non-playoff teams. But I do think that some of these stats are pretty drastic, especially when you compare them to where's the next one? Oh, when you compare to his record versus non-playoff teams. So he's winning a lot, a greater percentage of his games. His completion percentage goes way up. Yards per attempt goes up. His TD to interception ratio goes up, which for people who don't totally understand that statistic, it's basically you want a higher TD to interception ratio because, if it's like 1-to-1, it's like, well, for every 1 touchdown he throws 1 interception. But if it's 2.9 or closer to 3, that means for every 3 touchdowns he throws 1 interception. So that's much better. I put the first downs in there, like the average number of first downs that the team gets when in games that he's playing, that he starts and finishes versus non-playoff teams, is higher than it is versus playoff teams. So anyway, just some stats. I mean, because we complain about Tua all the time, and some of it is here. I'll take that off. Some of it's based on the eye test, but some of it really is based on the stats. When you look at the stats, he is significantly better against non-playoff teams than he is against playoff teams. that being said, I understand that most quarterbacks don't, their stats maybe kind of go down when they're playing against better competition. That's just to be expected. But there really is a significant drop off. And if you actually look at it, like when they lost Tyreek Hill in the middle of the Titans game, like their offense just stopped. I mean, they were struggling to get first downs. They were struggling to move the ball. And so, to your point, it's like, do you really want to pay Tua that much money when he's not a guy who really, he's not someone who, he's not a force multiplier. Okay. The things around Tua raise his level of play. If things are bad around Tua, his level of play goes down. And we saw that especially the first 2 years when he didn't have Tyreek Hill and Mike McDaniel calling up plays, because I do think that's a pretty significant advantage.
Yeah, I mean, that was, and that was the other part of the, what I was thinking about. Like, look, we've got the coach. The Dolphins have the right coach, right? McDaniel's legit. Like, you can see, he knows what he's doing. They've got the best receiver in the NFL, right? So why, so it's like, yeah, why do we need to pay for this guy who, can't really do it against good teams and can't really do it unless he's got, the great stuff like Mike McDaniel and Tyreek Hill with him, or Jalen Waddle, right? So it's just kind of like it just kind of blows my mind. Like, I don't think, now am I saying that Tua is a bad quarterback? No, I don't think he's bad. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I just think, the way all this in a salary cap league, all this stuff is affected. The way that you build your team, that has it affects everything, the salary of everybody. And you're gonna give this quarterback a huge contract, and I'm not sure that he's better than a replacement quarterback most of the time. So
right. And that, I think another point I'll just make here is that I understand that you can make stats say whatever you want them to say. And so I get that sometimes some stats are kind of flawed, and you have to compare this to, like, well, how are other quarterbacks against, winning teams or playoff teams? That's something I need to look at. But, one of the things is, I'm not saying he has to win every game every time he plays an elite team, but I've just seen so many examples of when he's playing a good team, the offense just disappears. I mean, they struggle to get first downs. They struggle to move the ball. They struggle to do anything. And so my concern is basically that, when he's out there, like against a better team, you basically feel like if the game starts to get away from you, he can't reel it back. And when you have an elite quarterback who has, elite athletic ability or just elite arm talent or just elite ability to read defenses, he can make up for, some shortcomings of your team and give you a chance. It's the same thing we talk about with, like, Josh Allen all the time. You can criticize Josh Allen, and does he turn the ball over too much? Yeah. But there's games that the Bills have a chance in purely because they have Josh Allen playing quarterback, and he can drag people with him to try to get the team over the top. And the thing is, with a quarterback like Tua, like you said, he's not a bad quarterback, but I think you can kind of throw him around into this kind of stew with this group of quarterbacks who are like 15th, 16th, 17th best in the league, and like, you can win games with those guys. And if you have a good situation around them, then yeah, maybe you can have 1 year where you make like a deep playoff run. But there's going to be limits because they can't. There's not a lot that they can do outside of the X's and O's. And people might come back at me and say, well, I've seen him do things here and there. I'm like, okay, fine. You can find me a couple of examples of, like, oh, against the Chargers this year or against the Ravens last year. But those games are a year apart. They're also at the beginning of the year. Games at the end of the year are a lot harder than they are at the beginning of the year. So the exception usually just proves the rule.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens the rest of the season. The Dolphins have everything out in front of them. But what I do wonder is, though, I just wonder, like, what does McDaniel think now that he's got to spend this much time with him? Because the play calling today was pretty conservative. Like, it was pretty, all right, we don't want to screw this up. And even with that, Tua threw a ball right to one of the Jets linebackers at one point in the game.
Yeah.
So I wonder, what does McDaniel think? Because McDaniel was in San Francisco when they had Jimmy Garoppolo, remember, where they were constantly trying to replace him. Like, this guy doesn't, even though they were getting everything they could out of him, right? They still wanted to upgrade the quarterback. So I'm interested to know, like, what are those meetings like after the season when McDaniel sits down with Chris Greer? What are they saying? Because it's obvious that Tyreek Hill is earning every dollar that we're spending on him. There's no doubt about that. The guy's unbelievable.
And the stuff about some of those interceptions or almost interceptions that Tua throws, we've seen this throughout his career. It's not something that's really gotten better, and that's why we question how much defense is he really reading. I mean, it feels like a lot of times he's just dropping back, planting his back foot and throwing, which that's probably what they need to do because their offensive line is bad, and that's what he's usually best at. But it ends up getting you into situations where sometimes he throws a ball and you're like, dude, why the hell are you throwing that? Like, you threw it, like, that's either an inaccurate throw or you didn't read where the defender was going to be and you shouldn't have thrown the ball there. So yeah, that's something that's just...
It seems eerily similar to Jimmy Garoppolo. It seems eerily similar to the problems that San Francisco had with Jimmy Garoppolo year after year after year.
Right.
But yeah, so we'll move on. Let's move on from that. We don't want people to accuse us of bashing our own team.
We're glad they won. So
that's right. Hey, they won. It's still alive. We still got we got a chance. We got a chance to do some damage this year. So that's a good thing. Anything else from the? I'm trying to think that the games yesterday and the games today. I mean, there's a lot of backup quarterbacks out there, Clark. A lot of backup quarterbacks and rookies still. So far this season. I thought
I got to give the Vikings and the Bengals a lot of credit. I mean, they're still, like, the Bengals won that game, but I mean, they're still being competitive with. I mean, what the Vikings started the year with Kirk Cousins, and then they went to Josh Dobbs, and now they're on to Nick Mullins, and they're and now Jake Browning with the Bengals. They're still competing.
Yeah, that was a fun game. It's kind of like we reached the point in the season where it's like we got these two teams and we know they're not going to go anywhere, but it's kind of fun to see what happens. Pittsburgh looks pretty terrible. You want to talk about the opposite of getting it done with a quarterback? That was horrific. I didn't, to be honest, I didn't expect much more from Trubisky than what they got, but yeah, that's awfully disturbing. Like, you lose Kenny Pickett, who's average, and that torpedoes your team. Like, that's a bit disturbing for a team with that many good players. I thought Detroit, Detroit getting back in the saddle there. Obviously they're a different team at home or indoors than they are outdoors. And, I think we can now see what Denver is. Like, Denver is, they've done a great job to, salvage their season and put some good stuff together. But, Denver certainly isn't going anywhere, especially this year. And that Russell Wilson contract, Clark, I mean, every time I watch Russell Wilson, I just think to myself, $50 million a year for this, $50 million a year. And I think that's what kind of got me thinking about the whole Tua conversation, was just going, really? That's what, that's what we're doing here. And, I think Denver's going to be talking about getting rid of him after the season's over, to be honest with you, because I don't know how you can survive, with that weight on your team. But, maybe they don't care. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, now that being said, like, I've been pretty critical of people praising Russell Wilson. Look, I don't think Russell Wilson's a bad quarterback either. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think he's doing what he should be doing on that team. He's giving you what he's got, and Sean Payton's getting the most out of him. But again, when you're paying that guy top dollar, you're not getting top performance. There's just severe limits as to what you can do. I feel like I'm talking about Tua again, but
yeah, I mean, look, you have to understand, like, people. You have to understand with Russell Wilson. You watch him throughout this season as he's played better as the season goes on, but how do you define better? Because basically it's been, okay, he'll throw some deep balls, and his deep ball's still pretty nice, and then he'll kind of run for some first downs, and then he'll kind of make some stuff happen off script. But it's not like their offense is just, moving up and down the field really quickly and just scoring a bunch of points. Like they're not doing that. So you have to wonder, like, do you really want to be paying that guy $50 million a year? By the way, what did you think about Sean Payton absolutely ripping into Russell Wilson on the sideline? Did you see that?
I missed that part. I missed the end of the game, so I didn't get to see that. But
I thought, well,
they were getting
like
blown out, so I'm not sure what he was.
there was like a false start or a off. Was it off? No, I guess it must have been a false start on, like, they had a formation where it was like there was a back behind Russell Wilson, and then there was another guy, like a tight end, to his right, and the tight end moved a little bit before the snap, and so then that took away a touchdown. And I don't know if there was something different that Russell Wilson was supposed to call, because Sean Payton on the sidelines was just, he was ripping, he was screaming at him. It's just kind of, I'm laughing. It's just because you don't really see that anymore in professional sports. Like, you just don't. That's an old school thing, and Sean Payton is an old school guy. You don't see that anymore. Coaches don't just like Andy Reid will, like, maybe bark at people a little bit, but it's just kind of, you just know, like, he doesn't need to say much. He's mad, or he wants you to calm down. Sean Payton he'll just rip into you. It's like when Russell Wilson got the ball stripped away from him when they were playing the Jets.
Right.
He's like, throw the ball away. Like, what? So I did think that was interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting watch for the offseason to see how they handle it, because there's no way I believe, like, Russell Wilson is so far from the typical quarterback you would want to run Sean Payton's system, that I don't see how that's going to be good long term. I don't think Russell fits into what Sean Payton wants to do. I was what else was I? Oh, so how do you where are you at with the Chiefs, Clark? What level of concern do you have for them? Do you feel like they're still Super Bowl contenders, or do you think, it's just a matter of time until they get beat?
I think we need to be seriously concerned about them. Okay? And we talked about this on the last podcast, and we'll do this again later. I've got the regular season rankings that we started doing. When you really dig into the stats on them, they've got some really concerning stuff. Where it's just their offense isn't really dominating people. Their defense seems to be pretty good. That is the one bright spot on the team. But they're just, especially with the eye test, you watch them play, and when they play bad teams, they seem to be able to score and seem to be fine. But against better teams, it is just a struggle. And so they still have a shot to win, to get to the Super Bowl, because, they have Patrick Mahomes, they have Andy Reid, they've been there before. And so I think they know how to function in these tight games. And that's when they played good teams this year. It's been all tight games. So they've got experience in those games. But it's just a question of, then it becomes basically like, what's your margin for error in those games? And I don't think they have a very big margin for error. Like, they can't screw around. They can't get behind by too much. And you can't, like, on these last second drives, it's going to be tough, because he's got receivers dropping balls, people lining up off sides, and it's like, you would think they would have figured this stuff out by, the middle of December, and they still haven't. So I think the thing that people need to remember is, I'm not saying that Mahomes isn't great. Mahomes is great. He's the best quarterback in the league. Andy Reid is a great coach. He's a Hall of Fame coach. Both of them are going to the Hall of Fame. Travis Kelce is really good. Their defense has become really good this year, especially their pass rush. Okay, I think that's really helped them, given that their offense has really been struggling all year long. And so, do I think they're still a Super Bowl contender? Yes. Do I think they can be contending for the Super Bowl for the next several years? Yes. But remember, the Patriots didn't win the Super Bowl every single year. They didn't make the Super Bowl every single year. They made a lot of AFC championship games, but every now and then you'd have a year where they'd get beat by the Jets or something. So I think this has the potential to be one of those years. I think the thing that's holding people back is they did just win the Super Bowl. Mahomes and Andy Reid are so great. And how do you trust these other teams in the AFC? You know, but I don't want to see, the thing is, I don't want to go too far in one direction where, I don't trust these other AFC teams. It's like, well, look at the Chiefs. Like, how can I trust that?
Yeah, I'm pretty concerned about them. I think that, the problem is it's hard to win. You're going to win three, like if they don't get the bye, you're going to win three playoff games and possibly one of them on the road playing like this. That's hard. That's going to be difficult to do because if you're going to be in games like that Buffalo game last week where one little thing and it could go either way, like those are tough to win. If their offense looked like efficient, and today it looked a little bit better, like they did I think the running game was pretty good. They got the ball to the running backs a little bit, and in the passing game, and I thought that it looked much better, but I don't know, man. I just don't know if this is going to come through in the postseason when it counts because they haven't come through the whole season. Like, it's not like there's not like that. Oh well, they've been getting better every week. They haven't been getting better. I could argue they've been getting worse. And the fact that Kelsey got hurt today, he hurt his elbow. Like, I don't know what's I don't know how that's going to go. So, but that being said, there's no dominant team out there. There's nobody that you're seriously afraid of. What do I count on them to get it done? I mean, I guess I probably would, but I'm not real thrilled with it. I'm not overjoyed with the Chiefs right now. I'm not saying, oh, well, they'll definitely win because blah, blah, blah. I think if a team comes in and plays a good game against them, I think they're probably going to lose.
Yeah. I mean, like if the Ravens come in and, Lamar is playing well, their running game's doing well, and, they're getting some plays from their receivers. Like the Ravens could beat them. Hell, the Browns could beat the Chiefs. I mean, if you're telling me it's going to be a kind of a tough game and it's going to be kind of close and the game's going to be, I mean, if the game's in Kansas City, okay, the game would probably be in Kansas City. I mean, that weather can't be much worse than what the weather would be in Cleveland, and if the quarterback's Joe Flacco, well, Joe Flacco's been in a bunch of playoff games. I like the Browns roster. I like they have Amari Cooper. They have who's the tight end? Njoku.
Yep.
Yeah, he's really good. I like their defense. I like their pass rush. Like they could beat them. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but like you could easily make a case for it. And it wouldn't be like so far out of the realm of possibility.
Cleveland almost beat Kansas City a couple of years ago with Baker Mayfield when the Chiefs were way better than this.
Yeah. And then the Dolphins, I mean, look, I wouldn't like the Dolphins having to go to Kansas City to play them because I don't like the Dolphins in cold weather. Historically, they just are not a good cold weather team,
But Clark, the Dolphins defense is now good enough to hold the Chiefs under 20 points.
That's the thing. Right, exactly.
They already did it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think they're definitely I think there's a bag, I'm sorry. There's a very small amount of teams that I actually think could go to the Super Bowl. I mean, I think it's from the AFC, it's probably Baltimore and Kansas City. Yeah. And that's probably it. I'm not really taking anybody else to win, more than 2 playoff games. So yeah, they still have a shot, but it's something to keep your eye on. And not because the Chiefs have to score 30 points and be unbelievable on offense every game. They don't need to be that. Okay, the Patriots for most of their run were never that. But they just need to be efficient and be able to, make plays when they need it. And they struggle to do that.
Yeah.
All right. So anything else on the NFL? Did you want to do your NFL rankings, or did you want to?
We'll do that, but let's talk about Brandon Staley.
Oh, that's right.
We gotta talk about, because Brandon Staley got fired by the Chargers. Brandon Staley and the GM Telesco, they both got fired after that Thursday night game.
Yeah, so we have to pour one out and say some we have to. It's kind of like that, do that in memoriam thing at the end of the Oscars. We gotta put his picture up and talk about what his career was. So Brandon Staley, I wasn't going to watch the game on Thursday night because it's the Raiders and the Chargers are starting Easton Stick at quarterback. So I certainly wasn't gonna watch it. But I looked at my phone. It was the first half. It was 42-0. and I'm watching so I go back and watch the highlights. I mean, and then you see all the stuff on social media where the Chargers quit. This is what it looks like when they quit on their coach. Like, boy, they really must hate this guy, blah, blah, blah. And so they fired him the next day, which I gotta say, like, the Chargers, I mean, yeah, it's better late than never, but I really thought they were just going to go the rest of the season. Nah, we're not going to fire him in season. I thought they were just going to stick this out for the next month while the whole thing falls apart. And every week in the press conference, Brandon Staley is getting pissed off and yelling at a reporter. I wondered, I was impressed that they were like, all right, you know what? Enough of this. They fire him and the general manager. So, yeah, we wanted to pour one out for Brandon Staley because let me tell you something. I mean, usually the Chargers are usually in the late game on Sunday. They're usually so it's usually Sunday around 6:45. You know what I mean, Clark? You're watching the red zone, and it's like, all right, how are the Chargers going to try to blow it today? How are they going to do it? And I mean, just the greatest hits of Brandon Staley going for it on fourth down in your own territory when you've got the lead in the fourth quarter. Why not? Like, it was so much fun. I got so much enjoyment out of, all right, what's Staley doing? What's going on? What's happening? I know he's up to something. And then, Clark, they just took they took all the gasoline out of him, man. He just stopped going for it on fourth down this year. And it just, I kind of felt bad for him, man. If you're going to go out, go out swinging. And, I feel like he didn't get to go out on his own terms. He just kind of fell into the background. It's like, oh man, everybody's shaming me for all these fourth downs. I guess I'll stop going for it. And it's like, no, man, it's the one thing that distinguished you from everybody else.
Yeah. Well, for the people, so the podcast used to be called something different, and we did that for a couple of years. Anyway, so and I'm just going to miss the content that Brandon Staley just kept delivering. I mean, just content, not every single week, but just multiple times during a season. He'd go for it on fourth down, and it's just like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? And so I'm going to miss that. And then the funny thing is, and I'm trying to think of examples of, him going for it on fourth down when it was completely ridiculous. So earlier this season, they're playing the Vikings, right? What was it, 24-17?
Yep.
I think, 24-17. They're in their own territory.
No. They were down. It was 28-20. They were down by 4, not 7. Or they were up by 4. I'm sorry. They were up by 4, not 7.
Oh, that's right. Okay. It was 28-24. You're right. And so it's late in the game, and they decided to go for it on 4th and 1, and that might have iced the game. I think there was still too much time left for that to be the case. So it was kind of just we just want to maintain the ball and not give it back to them. But you're deep in your own territory. Okay. So, and I was reading an article today, and it was in their article, they were saying, well, we agreed with him going on for it on fourth down, but his play calling was horrible. So on that particular one, instead of putting the ball in Justin Herbert's hands, they just run the ball right up the middle. And of course it gets stuffed. They don't get and so it's a turnover on downs. And then Kirk Cousins throws the ball to a guy, and the guy in the end zone, the guy should have caught it. And then he gets out of his hands, and then the Chargers intercept it, and they win the game. So he got bailed out, but it was oh my God, that call was so freaking bad. Okay. And he was notorious, like you were saying, he was notorious for going for it in his own territory. He went for it. This was 2 years ago. The Chargers were playing the Raiders, oddly enough. They were playing the Raiders, and I think the Chargers had a shot to get into the playoffs. They had to beat the Raiders, right?
Right.
And they were down 17-14. And this is early in the third quarter. He goes for it in his own territory. I think they ran the ball, and it got stuffed, because that seems to be his thing. He just runs the ball right up the middle on fourth down, and it doesn't work. So they ran the ball, it gets stuffed, and then they shut down the Raiders, but they were already in field goal range. So they kick a field goal, and they get up 20-14. They end up winning the game. I think they won by 3 because they kicked a field goal in overtime. And also the Chargers had to stage this furious comeback, which I gave a lot of credit to Justin Herbert because he kept converting long fourth downs to keep drives going to get them to tie the game. But if they didn't do that, maybe the Chargers could have won the game in regulation and gone to the playoffs. I mean, it was such an atrocious fourth down call. So, yeah, it's just, if there was a Hall of Fame for bad fourth down calls, I think Brandon Staley is on the first.
My favorite, Clark, my personal favorite is, I don't think it was this season. I think it was last season. They went for it on, it was almost the end of the game, like you're saying. They were up by 2. They're up by 1 or 2 points. It was less than 3. They go for it. They're playing Cleveland. They go for it in their own territory, right? They don't get it. Wait, there was like less than 30 seconds left. Okay, but Cleveland gets the ball, and thank goodness they missed the field goal. Otherwise, they would have lost that game. So it's just, the guy was fantastic, and then I love the attitude. Like a couple years ago when he first got the job, he's like, "No, listen, I'm going to be aggressive. This is what I think we should do, and that's the end of it. Whatever." And then he's just, I don't know what happened. I don't know if somebody talked to him or whatever, but he's just kind of slowly kind of backed off of that. And McDaniel was going for it on fourth down today that a few times that I thought were ridiculous. Now, granted, they had a huge lead, so it was different. But yeah, no, listen, and just the fact that the guy's supposed to be a defensive coach, and the defense just continues to get worse and worse
God. I mean,
every single year. So yeah, I think. But and you hear a lot of people like the last day or two like talking about, well, how good is this job? Blah blah blah. I'm like, people, like, this job's awesome. Like, I'm sorry, you have a quarterback. They have plenty of talent. Like, Nick Wright was on First Things First on Friday. Like, no, you know what? This is going to be a couple of years until they get this back together. This is not a quick whatever. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't agree with that at all. All they need to do is have a good draft coming up, and this team can make the playoff. They just made the playoffs last season.
Yeah.
Like, why are we acting like, so anybody who's stupid enough to tell you, this job's not that good, blah, blah, blah. The ownership isn't good, but that doesn't mean, like, you get the right guy in there, a guy who can help and I know everybody's going to be like, well, Justin Herbert, this is it's the ultimate, well, Justin Herbert's overrated, blah, 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 blah. Well, just watch this turnaround, Clark. Watch this turnaround. They don't have Brandon Staley anymore. Now, we'll see if they get an actual legit coach. They'll probably hire a coordinator that's cheap, and they'll probably suck anyway. But if we watch what happens if they hire the right coach, all the Justin Herbert doubters will start going, oh, wow, boy, I think Justin Herbert's pretty good. It's like,
well,
yeah.
And I did want to comment on that too, in terms of who do people think the Chargers are going to hire. Let me just point something out to people. Okay. A bunch of people are like, they should hire Harbaugh, or they should they should go get Bill Belichick, or they should trade, like Colin Cowherd the other day. They should try to trade with the Giants to get Brian Daboll. Okay, look, in my opinion, and again, this is an opinion, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I don't think there's any shot they're going to hire a guy that they have to pay a bunch of money to, because past history is usually the best indicator of future performance or future decision making. Okay, and the Chargers, they've shown no willingness to do that, to really open up. I mean, Brandon Staley had like 1 year of NFL coaching experience. Something like that as a coordinator, and they hired him.
4 years ago, he was coaching at some small school. I don't even know if it
Division
was
III in college.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the idea that they're going to actually do that, like, that just seems laughable to me. I don't see any shot that that's going to happen. I mean, could they maybe hire? I'm trying to think. I mean, I don't know how much money Dan Quinn's going to want. He's the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys. I mean, if he gets a head coaching job, it would be his second one, so maybe he wouldn't command a lot of money. So maybe I could see that happening. Although teams usually, if they hire a defensive guy, the next guy they hire is an offensive guy. So, and they've hired offensive coaches before, like Norv Turner and like Mike McCoy and some other people.
Well, and Clark, this is a franchise without really any direction. Like, when's the last time you met a Charger fan?
Well, especially now that they moved to LA, there's no Charger fans in LA.
There's no people don't care about the Chargers. Well, people don't care that much about the Rams in LA. They damn sure don't care about the Chargers in LA. So they have no fan base, right? So there's no they have no identity. Like, there's nobody. The Chargers are known for just blowing it. That's what they're known for. So there's nothing to there's no culture, there's no identity, there's nothing to get behind, right? So, but it's an NFL head coaching job, so people are going to want it. I get that, but yeah, I agree with you, Clark. I just think it's funny, watching all these people on TV trying to come up with ideas. As well, we should hire this guy. What about this guy? And what about this guy? John Middlecoff was saying, you know what? I think this whole thing with Tomlin and the Steelers, it's done. Like, if I'm the Chargers, I go try to get Mike Tomlin. I'm just like, they're not going to get Mike Tomlin. Like, they're not going. I'm sorry, the Chargers are not going to do that. Like, listen, I'm a Dolphins fan. Okay, we're pretty bad at hiring for the most part. I think we did an okay job with Flores, and I think we did a really good job with McDaniel. But that's like, that's one in the last 30 years. That's fantastic. But we certainly aren't good at it.
Well, and the other thing is, I was trying to think of other candidates. Like, okay, so there's Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for Detroit, but I don't really see that happening because it seems like you were telling me the other day, he's probably going to get any of the jobs that are open. He's going to kind of be able to pick and choose what he wants because he's probably a really hot commodity.
I don't think he's going to be cheap. I don't think you're going to get him for I don't think that's going to be like hiring coordinator and we'll pay him. We won't pay him. A big salary. I don't think you're going to get away with that with Ben Johnson. I think he's going to have too many offers.
Yeah, and also people might be like, well, why don't they just hire Kellen Moore? He's already on the staff. Well, they didn't even make him the interim coach. So I think that tells you what they think of him.
And the other thing is, their offense is the worst it's been since Justin Herbert's been there.
Yeah.
Kellen Moore's not doing like I know everybody thought he was hot shit because he was on the Cowboys, which apparently that's like that's supposed to mean something to me. But no, he's not any good. So I just wonder. Yeah, I agree with you. They probably are not going to hire the right guy. But you know what? Doesn't matter because you know what, Clark? Anytime a team has 4th and 2 in their own territory, from now on, I'm just it's not. I don't think a team's going to go for it, but it's that little bit of pause. A little bit of pause when you're watching the game because you think, Brandon would go for it here.
Well, they. I think in like. In history or no, you'll see this in like Star Wars stuff where it's like, oh, they call this maneuver during a battle the whatever the name of the general is. So now we should just start calling this the Brandon Staley. 4th and 5 at your own 20-yard line, and you go for it.
Right,
Brandon Staley there.
That's what it is, Clark. Fourth down in your own territory in the 4th quarter with the game on the line, and you go for it. That's what it is. It's the Brandon Staley. Like the only guy who had dared to try to something like that before was Bill Belichick. He did it once, and he got crushed.
Yeah.
Okay. So it never happened again. So yeah, that's the Brandon Staley. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and the only other thing I wanted to say about who the Chargers might hire as a head coach, I mean, the coordinator for the Texans, maybe, because he's done a good job with C.J. Stroud, but I kind of feel like it's going to be someone that no one really knows or expects. It's just going to be some other coordinator. And I would guess it's an offensive guy because they just had a defensive coach. And they're paying Justin Herbert. So I think they want to get the most out of that. So.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. All right, so want to talk about Draymond Green, or did you want to do the NFL rankings?
Oh yeah,
first?
Let me do that, and then we'll talk about Draymond Green. Yeah.
Yep.
So where? Hang on.
So NFL rankings. I'm going to take a guess here. I'm sure San Francisco will be number 1. Now, the question is who's number 2? I'm guessing it's Baltimore.
Yes, I moved them up. Hang on. So let me make this full screen. Okay, wait for that to load. Okay. We don't need to go through these again, but just, so I got 49ers 1, Ravens 2. I moved the Cowboys up because they just beat the Eagles, and the Eagles have been flirting with disaster all year long. So I kind of felt the need to kind of move them around. So
Clark, we ripped the Dolphins and then you have them 6th. Like, what are you doing?
Well, I mean, who else am I going to put there? Am I going to put the Jaguars there? I mean, it's to be honest, once we get down to 6, it's kind of, and even having the Chiefs there, it's like, well, the Chiefs beat the Dolphins, so I guess I got to put them above there, but it's not like I feel great about it. So, I mean, to be honest, I feel good about the 49ers, the Ravens, and then I guess the Cowboys, and then the Eagles, and then it kind of really tails off after that. So,
yeah,
but
I get
fine.
it.
Who, like I said, who should I have there instead?
Good. It's a good question, Clark. I'm not real. I mean, yeah, Jacksonville's the only team that you could even have a discussion about because there's nobody else in the NFC that's even worth talking about. And then,
I mean, I'm not going to put Detroit there because it seems like when they're not at home or if they're playing a decent competition and Jared Goff gets rushed a little bit.
Like Detroit and Miami kind of in the same boat almost,
Yeah,
it kind of,
and it's like, I mean, you want me to put the Browns there? It's like, I don't really know.
The Dolphins' defense is better than the Lions' defense. So yeah, you're probably right. You're probably 6th is probably about right.
I mean, Go ahead.
I mean, 49ers, yeah. I mean, they're number one until they lose, basically. Like looking at it from a college football rankings perspective.
Yeah.
Ravens, we all believe in them. We all believe in the culture. Um, we have some concerns, but we all believe in them. Cowboys, I think. I mean, I think you know what they're another team that all right, we'll keep them up there, but we don't really. I don't know that I really believe in them. You're putting them at third, but I don't know if they're really. I don't know if they're really the third best team. We'll see. We'll see how
Yeah.
they do. It's
Well,
one of
I
those
mean,
things.
we've still got we still got three. Well, the rest of the games today, and then we got three weeks to go. So everybody has a chance to kind of to see like, okay, should you be here, or are you guys going to slip up at some point? And I'm not even necessarily saying it's like a loss, but it's just like, how do you look when you're playing? Like, do the
Yeah,
Cowboys lose to the Bills? Then it becomes like, oh, okay, then you got to
yeah. I
kind of
mean,
rethink it. So
yeah, I would say the Eagles, we'll keep you at fourth for now, but we don't like the way you're playing at all. Like
right, I
you're
mean
getting the benefit of the doubt because you went to the Super Bowl last year.
yeah, and it's just they've got to start playing better. But again, it's kind of like the Chiefs. It's like, well, they'll figure it out. It's like, all right, we're late in December. Like, are you going to figure it out yet, or is this just kind of the way you are? I mean, we've said it multiple times. I think they really miss both their coordinators, so who are now
Yeah,
head coaches.
yeah. The Chiefs are one of those things. I mean, they can't score. When are they going to score 20? They scored 20 points today, but when are they going to? They definitely got some points off turnovers today. But yeah, so I wonder when are they going to? When are they going to be able to score? Because
Yeah,
that's going to be the issue with them. If they can't get above 20 points, they're going to leave teams opportunities to beat them that really shouldn't beat them.
exactly. Yeah, um, yeah. I mean, the Dolphins. Look, their offense has been really good basically all year long. Um, and they're still, I mean, even in the games that they lost, like they still moved the ball relatively well. They made some mistakes that kind of shot themselves in the foot, so especially, I mean, they need to have Tyreek Hill. He has to come back. But yeah, and their run game has actually been pretty damn good, and especially in the red zone, when they get to the red zone, they're pretty damn good at, getting touchdowns. So, that can't really be ignored. But again, they have their chance over the next 3 games to try to beat some good teams. So, it's like, look, it's all in you guys' hands. You got to go out there and do it. And you got 2 or 3 at home. So, yeah. So anyway, I'll update this, next week when we do the podcast. But here, I'll click this off. Okay.
Yeah, so
All right.
I think that's pretty accurate. I think this year in the NFL there's just not like a huge gap. There's not like, as we all agree San Francisco is the best team, but after that, you could make an argument for any team you want, basically.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I'm just, like I said, over these last 3 weeks, we're just going to pay attention to these games and see how, how do these teams play? Does Philadelphia, does their offense start to look better? You know, but even then, I don't know. I mean, they played head to head against San Francisco and they got their asses kicked. So it's really tough for me to, same thing with the Cowboys. It's like you played San Francisco and you got crushed. So I just, it's hard for me to, but again, we'll see how they play. Like maybe the Cowboys, beat the shit out of the Bills today, and it's like, oh, okay, and then they kick the crap out of the Dolphins, and then you're like, all right, well, so
Yeah. Yeah, it's in front of a lot of teams. So yeah, but this should be a fun games. I think who plays tonight? Baltimore and Jacksonville play tonight, and then Seattle and
that's a big
Philadelphia
one.
play tomorrow night. So we got some good games, and then we're gonna have a lot of football next weekend, Clark. It's gonna be pretty wild. I think it's Saturday, Sunday, 3 games on Monday. So this is gonna be it's gonna be an interesting
The
interesting week.
next podcast we do, I mean, I just forgot this. We got to do this before Christmas. The next podcast we do has got to be the Festivus episode.
That's right. Well,
So
or
we
we
got
could
to
do
do
it.
the
Or we could do
yeah
it for the new year too.
yeah. So one of those, but yeah, the airing of sports grievances. So
Exactly right. Yeah, I was thinking about that today. I've got some. I've definitely got some good ones.
yeah. I gotta this week. I gotta get some down. I've got a few ideas, but I gotta get them kind of down. So anyway, enough of the NFL. I guess let's move on to Draymond.
All right,
Draymond.
so Clark, the Dolphins win today. Made me want to throw my arms in the air like Draymond. Hopefully hopefully there'll be nobody nearby to get punched in
And
the
swing them
face.
around like you just don't care.
That's right. Just because I'm not a flopper, Clark. I'm not a flopper. Um, so Draymond Green got suspended for the second time this year, third time ejected from a game for just for no reason, wildly swinging his arms, which he claims to sell a call, which I'm not sure what the hell call he's trying to sell. Nurkic, basically barely touched him, and he was acting like he just got thrown out of a cannon or something. And swings his arms wildly, smacks Nurkic right in the face. Nurkic goes down. They kick him out of the game, which, the call was fairly obvious that, okay, that's what has to happen. And then the NBA suspends him indefinitely. So, I think that the most obvious thing to say about it is, look, the Warriors, you kind of did this to yourself. You've let Draymond kind of act this way for years now. Like, you lost the finals 7 years ago because of this guy. Like, this isn't new. Like, it's not some behavior like, oh man, what's wrong with Draymond? Why is he acting like that? No, he pretty much has done this his entire career. Now it seems to be happening more frequently, and it's worse when it does happen. We got the headlock with Rudy Gobert this year. We've got, multiple incidences of him acting like a crazy person. And, it's like, so part of me is like, well, Warriors, you kind of deserve what you get. I mean, you literally, like, you enabled this guy, right? Last year, you're like, oh, well, we don't have any championships without him. So, he stomps on, he punches Jordan Poole before last season starts, and then stomps on Domantas Sabonis in the playoffs. And it's like, oh, well, we still think, basically the argument was, well, the juice is still worth the squeeze, right? We're still winning. We still think we have a shot at the championship. So, we're not gonna do anything. And then now it's like, oh, well, he's got a problem and he needs to go get some help and take care of himself. It's like,
oh, okay.
Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. So before he didn't have a problem before? Like it was totally fine before, but now it's not okay. So yeah, I think part of it is Draymond's not as good as he used to be, and the other part of the bigger part is the Warriors are not as good as they used to be. They don't intimidate anybody, which I don't really think Draymond really intimidated anybody, but they don't really. Nobody's afraid of them. So teams when they play the Warriors are coming at them. They're not worried about it. They played Minnesota a while back, and Anthony Edwards is talking trash to Draymond, telling him to shut up. So people are not intimidated by them. So this is one of the best way they can try to beat people is to, push them around and stuff, or do all of this nonsense, which that's the thing. It'd be one thing if Draymond was a tough guy, but he's really not a tough guy at all. He doesn't do tough guy stuff. He's taking cheap shots at people. So I think, I think Draymond's going to be out for at least a month. And then we'll see what happens. But the idea that they're going to fix this, especially when Draymond's like, yeah, I don't apologize when I agree with what I did, and it's like, when I intend to do it, I don't apologize for it. It's like, okay, that's a full on narcissistic way to go through life. I don't care as long as I agree with my intentions, as long as that's what I intended to do, I'm not apologizing for it. Like, good luck with that, you crazy person. So yeah, they let all that stuff go on, and then the Warriors, they didn't keep really suspend Draymond for any regular season games last year when he punched Jordan Poole, and then they give him a 4-year $100 million contract. So yeah, I certainly don't feel bad for the Warriors, but yeah, I think this is well deserved by him, and I think Draymond needs to clean it up because a lot of this is just ridiculous.
Yeah, there's a lot of cheap shots. One of the things there's a few points I want to make. So one, okay, Draymond Green is not valuable to the Warriors, or has not been valuable to the Warriors because of this crap. Okay, like you were saying, this isn't tough guy stuff. These are cheap shots. Draymond Green was valuable because he's a great defender. Okay, he can defend multiple positions. He's got a really high basketball IQ. He helps their offense function. A lot of games, he's kind of a point guard. Okay? All this other stuff is totally extraneous. Okay? Draymond basically, it seems like he gets himself really amped up, and sometimes he gets a little too amped up, and then he pushes stuff way too far, into this cheap shot stuff, you know. But I just, Colin Cowherd keeps making the point, and this was so funny this week because Colin Cowherd, who owns the Volume podcast network, in addition to being on FS1, and they had, well, I guess currently Draymond isn't on the Volume because they're redoing his contract or something like that.
I don't think he's doing podcasts during the season right now, but he will be.
Yeah. So they're negotiating his contract, and Colin Cowherd is trying to. Seemingly, it's like he's trying to be objective about it, but he's not really, or he's making these arguments where it's like, well, there were tough guys in the 80s. There was Bill Laimbeer, and then there was Dennis Rodman. And it's like, yeah, but those are, first of all, that's like 30 years ago. Okay, the league is totally different now. And again, the stuff Draymond's doing, it's not tough guy stuff where it's in the flow of the game and you're trying to intimidate somebody. It's just BS. I mean, I said this to you yesterday. The stuff with Rudy Gobert. I mean, that to me that was worse than the Nurkic thing. I mean, that was just the Nurkic thing was kind of in the flow of the game. I mean, he went too far and he obviously should have gotten kicked out of the game and he should have gotten suspended. But the Gobert thing, it's like a fight breaks out and he just runs in there and puts the dude in like some people are saying headlock. I don't know if it's a headlock or a chokehold or what. But I mean, and then they're having to get him off. They're like, dude, get off him. And he's not getting off him. To me, that was way worse. But yeah, the whole stuff about, he's a tough guy and all this stuff. Again, that's not what made him valuable. And then, Cowherd's making these points about, he's a really good employee and he's a really thoughtful guy. And I'm like, he probably is, off the court. He's probably a really great guy. He clearly just gets on the court and he gets really amped up and he takes stuff way too far. So, I just, some of that was really ridiculous to me, pointing out all this stuff about, he's an enforcer. It's like, they have enforcers in hockey. Dude, different sport. They let you fight in hockey. They've never let you fight in the NBA. Even in the 80s, they didn't let you fight. A fight would break out and then, they'd kick people out of the game and then that would be the end of it. You just move on. In hockey, you get in a fight and then you go in the penalty box for 5 minutes and then you keep playing. That's a totally different point.
And the other thing is the enforcer guy in hockey. That doesn't exist the same way that it used to. It goes back to, like you said about the NBA. It's the same thing. Well, yeah, when you're talking about the 80s and the 90s, yeah, but we're not in that era anymore. Those the excuses made for Draymond are just ridiculous. Okay. Now, that's not to say Draymond's a bad guy. I don't think Draymond's a bad guy. I think he's a really good guy. He's going to have this whole other career, whole new career when he's done playing. I think the guy's a good person. I don't think, and players like Draymond. I don't think he's he's not one of these guys that everybody hates,
Yeah.
So it's not that he's a bad person, but I'm sorry, man, this stuff it's not tolerable. I'm not, and now that being said, I am not crazy outraged that, oh my God, Draymond needs to be kicked out of the league. Get the hell out of here with that. But this is not I'm sorry, this stuff shouldn't be going on. And, to act like, oh, well, I didn't mean to do, whatever. And it's like, dude, the incidences with him are so numerous. I can't even count them on here. The time he kicked Steven Adams right in the, where spot, I mean, punching LeBron in the balls. This is par for the course for him. It's been his entire career. This is how he gets himself into, where he wants to be able to play well. And sometimes it just goes completely off the rails. And it's not the same thing as Dennis Rodman at all. Okay.
Yeah,
I think Dennis Rodman had some mental issues when he was in the league. He had some stuff he had to get worked out. Draymond's there for every game. We don't have to go to Vegas to find Draymond where he's out drinking with his friends. It's not like Draymond's not a mess. He's not a disaster of a human being. That would be different. Then we'd be having a different conversation. I think Draymond just has an impulse control problem, and he's never had to worry about it because nobody's ever really disciplined him about it. So he just continues to and he's gotten away with all kinds of nonsense forever. So
I think it's basically it's like look, when people are coming out defending him, I'm like, okay, guys, wrong time to really defend him. You need to make this, the strong point needs to be made. He deserved to be suspended. He's been pushing stuff way too far. It's totally unacceptable, you know, and he needs to get this together and stop doing this kind of crap. Like, and that's got to be the first thing. And then you can talk about he's a good guy and you're rooting for him and you want him to deal with this and get over it, but don't go way off the deep end and be like just almost excusing what's happening is just, well, it's just stuff happens and you just kind of deal with it. And it's like, well, no, because you don't see other players doing this stuff. Like you'll see some games where stuff will happen and maybe a guy gets a flagrant 2 and then he leaves the game and then that's the end of it. It's like, I made a mistake in that instance. I'm sorry, whatever. Let's move on. And then you move on and it's fine. Because that's a situation where stuff happens. Okay. But when stuff happens over and over and over and over again, and also the other thing, people are saying, oh, well, the Warriors need Draymond to win championships. Yes, but they need him because of his basketball IQ, because of his defense. They don't need him because of this stuff. And I mean, if that to me is just so. It's like if you're telling me that they need that to win, then how can you then say he needs to get this under control? Because you're not really, you're kind of speaking out of both sides of your mouth. You're basically saying, well, he needs to do this stuff, but he doesn't need to do this stuff. Well, which is it? Are you saying he needs to do this stuff because that to me just gets ridiculous. The only other point I wanted to make was before he got suspended, I was watching Get Up, and Dominique Foxworth was making a point like, let's be careful about how much we suspend Draymond because this sets a precedent. So the next time some guy hits somebody in the head, you'd have to suspend him for that exact amount of games. And it's like, yeah, but dude, this is a totally different situation. Draymond has his own, the NBA referees probably have to have a day of meetings just to talk about how to deal with Draymond Green. Like he's got a whole reputation around this stuff.
Well, the other thing, the NBA is telling us flat out, his punishment is directly related to past behavior.
Yes.
They're not. So this idea they're setting a precedent, no, they're not. They're directly telling you they're not setting a precedent. Like that for that Gobert thing, nobody else was getting 5 games for that.
Yeah.
He got 5 games because of all the shit he keeps on doing and it continues to happen and all the stuff that happened in the past. And the NBA is telling us directly that that's what we're going to do. So, and then the people suspended indefinitely. I don't know that I like that. You shouldn't be setting the precedent thing. And I'm just like, they're suspending him indefinitely because they don't know what the hell to do.
Yeah.
Okay. The NBA is at their wits' end with this guy. They're like, Jesus Christ, what do we need to do to you, dude? Like, we continue to suspend you. You missed finals games. You cost your team a championship. What else do we have to do? And yet you can't control yourself for a month. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's ridiculous. And we need to just before we, I think I don't have anything else to say on Draymond, but look, what I do want to say is though, like, it really sucks that the Warriors, because if they'd have, I don't think this team was going to win anything, but it sucks that it just feels like it's getting ruined now, just because now Draymond's just going off the rails, and that's unfortunate. But that being said, I just want to make a point. Like, I know everybody in the sports media, they want to make definitive statements about the NBA when we haven't even gotten to Christmas yet. I know that everybody wants to have like a thought, the Lakers won the in-season tournament. Oh, and that's great for them. I think that's a nice accomplishment. But nothing that has happened to this point in the NBA means anything. Okay? None of the stuff that's happened means anything. Okay? The Warriors are 10-14. It's like, I don't think the Warriors are going to win the championship, but none of what's happening actually matters. Like, let's see what happens. They got 60 games to go, guys. Let's see what happens. Okay? It's the NBA. We know who the good teams are. Like, there's no mystery to the NBA. Like, it's been that way its entire existence. We know who's going to be good. So, yeah, and by the way, good or bad, I think Boston's got a really good team. We'll see what happens. Like, we're miles away from any of that being able to be discussed rationally. So, yeah. Now this Draymond thing, this may have some lasting impact because of what could happen to them, and if they go into a tailspin while he's out, this could really dramatically affect their season, because they're having trouble winning games as it is. But for the most part, like, guys, let's enjoy the ride. Like, I don't want to hear about, I know everybody's like, oh, well, this team, what do you think about this team? Minnesota, man, what do you think about Minnesota? They're playing really well. The number 1 seed right now in the West. It's like, I don't even understand. We never used to talk about seeding until after the All-Star break, at least. And now it's like, we got to talk about, every show's got to talk about the MVP. Who's the MVP? Who do you think's going to win the MVP? So it just makes me laugh, but I just wanted to make the point. Like, listen, I love basketball. I'm following it. I get it. But I completely understand that I'm not watching any of these games going, well, I mean, if that team's like that, this means, it definitely means something.
Right.
Nothing
I think
that's happened
there's
means
things
anything.
that you can point out and go, okay, this team has this issue. Let's see how this plays out over the next 6 months. So, the Bucks on defense, the Lakers, their size, obviously, like that's, that really helps them. Is LeBron going to stay healthy? Is Anthony Davis going to stay healthy? Are they going to miss extended time? How are the other guys going to play? Denver, Jamal Murray got injured. I don't think he's back yet. It wasn't a really, really serious injury, but, you want to get him back. They still look really good. So that's not, but it's like they can't really have a big injury. Like if they get a big injury, they're going to have a problem. The Phoenix Suns, I think they played one game with all 3 of their guys, with Durant, Booker, and Bradley Beal, and then Bradley Beal got hurt again.
Yeah, so look, that ankle injury looked bad.
Yeah, so that's a big problem. Plus Kevin Durant, he hasn't gotten hurt yet, but he gets hurt a lot now. The Warriors are are the Warriors even going to make the play-in tournament now because of this Draymond suspension? Like that's obviously a problem. And then you got other teams like Minnesota, Indiana. It's like, okay, this is kind of interesting. Let's watch what happens. And then you saw Boston, like, you were kind of discussing this, I think, on the last podcast. Like, yeah, their offense at the end of these close games, just same crap we've been seeing for the last few years. So it's like, what's going to happen, as the games get more important later on in the season. So I think there's things that you can point out and go, all right, this is something to watch. But yeah, like you said, as the games get more important, that's what people need to remember. As the games get more important, the level of play goes up. And then it's like, who can rise up to that level or go beyond that, or are there teams that just everybody starts getting up here and then they're like, all right, this is as high as we go. And that's it. And then they kind of tail off.
And like I was saying about the in-season tournament, it was playoff level intensity. It wasn't playoff level of play. Okay? The level of play was nowhere close to what you're going to see in the playoffs. So, right. Yeah, but don't get me wrong. I'm not taking anything away from the Lakers winning that tournament. That's awesome for them. Like it's good to play in high intensity games at, certain points in the season so you can kind of see where you're at. And so I think that's important. I'm really looking forward to Christmas Day. We're gonna have 3 NFL games and like 5 NBA games on Christmas Day. Like, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. That's gonna be a lot of fun. But anyway, yeah. So I don't know what's gonna happen with Draymond Green. But yeah, we got the NFL playoffs coming up. We got 3 more games, 3 more weeks of regular season games, and we'll see how it goes. Hopefully the Dolphins can get in and keep us interested. But yeah, that's all I got. Anything else?
No, I think we're good. So yeah, we'll yeah, I mean I don't know what your schedule's like next week, but I mean I got a bunch of days off, so maybe we can do something in the middle of the week or I don't know. So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, follow us, and everybody have a lovely evening.